Hello, my lovelies. Welcome to this recap session on Psychology as a Science. We're just going to look at and just recap the key features of science. Really important because this can come up as a question within the exams. So remember, this is designed as a recap. You should already have notes on this, and these terms should be in your glossary, but it's always good to do a recap. So what are the key features of science? Objectivity, empiricism, rational and systematic, replicability, reliability and validity, falsification, determinism, and reduction. There are other ones, but these are key features of science. Really important that we understand them. Let's just have a quick look. What do we mean by objectivity? Objectivity means fact, factual information. Subjectivity is based on biases, so therefore opinion. In science, we want to be factual. Really important that we are, because if we've got factual information, that means it's followed a scientific process of doing investigation. So there's a high level of replicability, which makes the findings more reliable, whereas subjectivity, it's based on opinion. It's hard to replicate that type of thing as well. Empiricism, this is a strong view, or it's looking at the idea of objective evidence. That means creating a database based on objectivity, in the sense of carrying out research using the scientific method of investigation to get this objective evidence to support our theories. So when we look at empiricalism, it's about looking at using the scientific method of investigation to do our research, which will then either support or challenge the theories that we're investigating. Science needs a rational way of doing things, and it's based on objective reason and logic. It's really important that we have this approach, because that will influence a systematic outlook, in the sense the way that we carry out our methods and procedures. So that allow us, if something is systematic, it's carried out in a rational, logical process, which is, in essence, it's carried out a step-for-step thing. So when we do our standardized procedures in our methodology, we can say we do this, then that, then the next thing, which allows for things to be replicable. It is really important that we have replicability, because in order for us to find significance, we need to be 95% correct, at least 95% correct. So for example, if we were doing an experiment and we carried it out 20 times, 19 of them need to have the same and similar findings. And that's why we need replicability, so that we can get reliability in our findings, which will allow us, through our testing, to get validity in our theories, because we've got that empirical data to support it. Falsification is very important in science, and that's the ability to prove something wrong or a hypothesis wrong. I know it gets a bit confusing when it comes to hypotheses. It is better to prove, and this is what scientists want, they want to prove their null hypothesis right and their alternative hypothesis wrong. And that's the process of a falsification. It's trying to prove things wrong, because we get a step closer to the truth. And what does that mean? That means if we're carrying out a hypothesis, we've got our alternative, we've got our null, and we didn't find significance, so our results for alternative hypothesis are less than 95%. What does that mean? It means we've got falsification. We've proved our null hypothesis right. Because what does that mean? It means that the IV doesn't have a significant effect on the DV. So that means we can eliminate that IV, replace it with another IV to see whether that has the effect. And sometimes it's just changing things very slightly, and then we test it again. Falsification is really important. Determinism, you know what it is. We've looked at free will versus determinism, but that is a key feature of science, that all behavior has a definite cause. Something causes our behavior, and that can be either internal or external. We have reductionism, and that is the belief that human behavior can be explained by breaking it down into its simpler or its smallest component. down to one tiny little thing. So for example, these two work hand in hand. We might say that behavior is determined by our genes. Yes, that's the cause, our genes. Where reductionists will say, hold on, that's still a little bit too general. Where reductionism reduce it to reduce. It will reduce it down to a specific candidate gene, to one particular gene, and saying, well, that is the cause. So these two do work hand in hand, and they're very much part of science. So it's based on the concept that all behavior has a specific cause, be it internal or external, and behavior is determined, and then it should be possible then to predict what's going to happen, how human beings will behave in certain behaviors. And that's what's really important. So we're doing this research so we understand to why it's happening, but then we can make predictions and how. And that's what predictability is really important. Our theories can say in these situations, this is how people are going to act. The scientific approach can be classified as scientific determinism. So here we've got another type of determinism beyond the ones, remember we've looked at determinism in general, hard, soft, environmental, biological, and psychic determinism. This is another type of determinism that is applied to the scientific method of investigation. Science states that all behavior has a causal relationship. So science states that all understanding is based on a causal relationship. That's why it's deterministic, cause and effect. This means that there is a definite cause that has a specific effect, cause and effect. Scientific investigation. So if we're looking at science, we could actually use this as our type of determinism as it looks at science as a whole. So psychology and the scientific method. Now, psychology, being a science, allows it to have 4 scientific goals, and this applies to science in general. It gives us a description. Science tells us what has occurred. This has occurred when that IV has impacted on the DV. So it's telling us what has occurred. It tells us why this behavior or this mental process has occurred. So it gives us the insight into why this is happening. It allows us to make predictions, identifies conditions under which a future behavior or mental process is likely to occur. So again, this is really important. This is what science is all about. It's about finding out why things are happening. It allows us to make these predictions and change. Applies psychological knowledge to prevent unwanted behavior and to bring about desired change. So we can learn from it. For example, they used to believe in children that as long as their physical needs were met, a child will grow up fine. But we have learned from the Robertsons that just because a child's physical needs are met doesn't mean they will grow to be well-balanced adults. So again, it allows us to bring change, identify the importance of key behaviors, key applications. So psychology, being a science, it gives us these scientific goals. So let's do a little bit of evaluation. I'm just doing point explain. A strength. Knowledge acquired using scientific methods are more than just passive acceptance of the facts. Because they've gone out to test them, it's not just saying, oh, we'll accept it. This means that the facts are replicated to ensure that the data is reliable, ensuring that there is a strong empirical database. Rather than just think, oh, it's common sense, we all know that. No, that's a very passive view. They're actively testing it out, seeking this knowledge. Limitations. Not all psychologists share the same view that we should study human behavior scientifically. Come on, which approach? Yes, the humanistic approach. As they believe that humans are unique and should be seen as individuals and not studied like objects as we see in science. And that's very much supported to the humanistic approach. Each person is unique, and we cannot group people into certain types of behavior. And we shouldn't treat, like science studies things as objects. Humans are not objects. Another point, much of the subjective matter studied in psychology is unobservable. True. What people think, look at the cognitive approach. And therefore it can be argued that human behavior cannot be measured with a degree of accuracy. So that is a key issue with that. So explain it is very difficult to observe a person's thought process or mind, as these can be considered as abstract constructs. So yes, cognitive approach is a nice link to that one, because we can only make assumptions from what the data is telling us. So it's really important. So a nice little recap, please. It's really important that you know these key features. In another video to come up soon, we're going to be looking at, is psychology a science? You know, because there is that debate, is psychology a science or isn't it? So watch out for that video, because it's really important to know those key elements. And when you're doing that argument, these key features are of vital importance as well. On that happy note, my lovelies, take care and be good, and I will speak to you